Greetings, everyone. This is Virtuous Roots, where we reclaim virtue to bring it to our home and yours. And I'm Thomas McCuddy.
And I'm Thomas Quackenbush.
And I'm Nick Wiegand. And this is a part two, a follow on of how to cultivate virtue in the family. If you missed the first part, it was really revolved around the idea of cultivating virtue in ourselves and really the different ways to do that, especially if we don't have someone who can directly pour into our lives, and just really how to seek that out, how to find and then how to cultivate it ourselves. So with this follow on, again, I'm going to read Titus 2:11 through 14. For the grace of God has appeared, bringing salvation for all people, training us to renounce ungodliness and worldly passions, and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in the present age, waiting for our blessed hope, the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ, who gave himself for us to redeem us from all lawlessness and to purify for himself a people for his own possession, who are zealous for good works. And so I really like that verse, and I know it really plays.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I want to live my life so that his sacrifice wasn't for not. So the idea of, okay, so we've hit this point where so we've come to a point where we've cultivated virtue in our lives to a point. Now, how do we cultivate that in our families?
So we sort of left off last time discussing how if you have children and they are not sharing your idea of what's good and beautiful and true, or
Well, let's
again,
hope your idea of good, true, and beautiful is the idea.
correct.
Okay,
correct. No, correct. That
We're not talking. There's no your truth, my truth thing.
No.
There is
No.
the good, the true, and the beautiful.
But their goals are in a different arena.
Okay,
that they're
fair.
They are maybe nope. This is what I want to do. They're living according to their passions, their pleasures versus what's actually true and good. The reality is, if they do not recognize what is actually true and good, you can do, and this is what the world does, a behavior modification. You can bring them in line such that they will behave a certain way for a certain time. I think this is what we often see, and why many children, after they leave the home, once they're out of that environment, they no longer have those restrictions.
Right.
So this is why the power of virtue, and why this is a part of, and why we link this with discipleship, is because as we're discipling, as we're trying to cultivate this virtue in our children, we're trying to develop in them this character that's going to abide, that's going to remain, much like as we remain in Christ, we retain his characteristics. But that's going to require, first and foremost, they need to recognize what is true and good. We'll take concrete, telling the truth. Okay, so I, as a parent, I say, okay, I don't want to lie. I want to tell the truth. My child, I look at them, they're like, well, why do I have to tell the truth? And like, because this is good, but it doesn't get me what I want. You start having these conversations, and
if you're willing to have the conversations,
yeah. So I mean, I
which you ought to be, right? Yeah.
I encourage the conversations, because if my child is valuing, but I really want these things instead, and the lies get me that. We can see the disordered passions. We can see that we probably have some sort of intemperance. We have this. They're driven by this, whatever it is that's guiding them, and we have to deal with that. We have to engage. All right, your desire for these things, it's disordered. The things themselves might be good, but this justice, this honesty, we owe people the truth. This is a greater thing than this lesser thing that you're pursuing. And until they recognize that, we can get them to change the behavior. And this is what our parents, well, I will punish you until you do what I want.
Right.
And then they do what you want, but their heart is not there. They're biding their time.
Well, but that's not saying punishment is wrong. Like
Correct.
There's an element, and it works together. But I did hear you say, and I want to make sure to remove the phrase "because I said so" out of your vocabulary as a parent.
That's
That's
what I was going to say too, because I feel like everything. I think we've talked about this in the past. Like if we want our kids to be honest, and we're not completely honest, even if we're not honest, like we're honest 90% of the time, we may be more honest than our kids. But they take that 10% of time where you're like, this is that gray area where we can, we can fudge it a little bit and kind of change it. But that gives them license to make those discernments themselves. And
Right.
they're like, well, you do it, Dad.
Well,
you say that, Dad.
as it should.
Yeah.
I mean, it should. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah.
And because I mean, that's just, that's why like our wives are there, because a lot of times we say things because we're guys, and both Thomas and I have sons, and we're like, we might say things that a guy would say, and my wife's like, why are you telling them that now they're going to say it like all the time? And you've given them license to say that. And I'm like, you're right. So
I hear you saying remove because I said so from your vocabulary, and you saying that the parenting through do as I say, not as I do is detrimental. And the problem is I think a lot of parents use both of those.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if we parent do as I say, not as I do, I will just flat out say I think you're a poor parent. I think it's poor parenting. I think it's an awful way to be a parent.
So here's the on a concrete why this method's better. Instead of saying because I said so, in other words, we need to tell the truth. Well, why do I got to tell the truth? Because I said so. That's model A. So as a virtuous parent, you're going to recognize I'm telling truth because Jesus is the truth. God is truth, and we reflect him when we speak truth. That's so much better of a reason when a child asks, why should I tell the truth? Because we want to reflect Jesus, because we want to reflect God.
Right, yeah.
And that it is, depending on how far you want to go, how old your kids are, Satan is the father of lies. When you lie, you're reflecting Satan. You're reflecting, this is literally anti-Christ behavior.
Right.
It's going against Christ. So with your child, now, again, there might be a parent who says, well, what if I have a child that cares nothing about God?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that becomes part of the issue, is that as this verse, Titus talks about, grace trains us to renounce ungodliness. And if we've rejected the grace of Christ, there is this element. This is why the salvation of our children, their relationship with Jesus is first and foremost.
Yes.
And that's why virtue without Christ, it's going to be hollow.
Yep.
It's going to be, it'll have that form of godliness and deny its power.
Yes, exactly.
And I think that's the other thing I want to communicate with parents, is that it's not just about getting them to act the right way. It needs to come from that place of grace with Jesus Christ. And unfortunately for a parent, there's many parents, well, I can't save my kids. And the answer is you can't.
Mm-mm.
You're not able to.
Nope.
But this is where, again, we need to have the faith and the trust and the hope that in relation to our children, being the best parent we can be, being that best example, that maybe for them, again, in their moment of crisis, in their moment, they're going to look and they're going to realize, wait, there's something to what they were talking about. Like they held true. That's the importance of living that out, and why we as parents need that first.
Exactly.
Because one of our principles is you can't give what you don't have.
Right.
So if we're not living the Christ-like life, there is no way we can give that over to our children or even model that.
So I think it's important that the parents that are listening to this, and that we understand that there's going to be parents that have teenagers, because that was one of the things you just said was, what if my kid doesn't want anything to do with God, because it's, is it too late? All the way down to parents who might have one, cooking at the moment, ready to be born. It's like this is something that ideally, yeah, we would be doing this from birth, but we have to implement it regardless of the age. So with my grandkids, one of the things that I started out with was you can ask my grandkids, what do we seek? And they will tell you, we seek the true, the good, and the beautiful. I gave them that foundation to begin with, just so that I could use those as the reference. I could go back to those things to have some sort of foundation on which to, when they do ask the question, why? And I mean, my grandkids, they ask that question a lot, right? So I think it's important that we have to establish that foundation, and the true and the good and the beautiful is a reflection of God, a reflection of who Christ is. I think that is probably at least one of the points to start so that we have something to point back to
Yeah.
when we're having these conversations.
Because not all those whys are just them trying to be. Because sometimes we misconstrue them asking why with disobedience.
Yeah, sometimes it is disobedience.
Sometimes it is, and you
But
got to
you're
make that
right, yeah.
discernment.
Yeah.
It's like there's sometimes I'm like, I'm especially my kids tend to when they get them one on one, and like we're driving. A lot of our conversations we're driving, and my daughter she'll bring up something, and ask me why, and I'm like, this is an appropriate time. This is a great time for us to have this conversation because I can take the time and we're both, sometimes when in the heat of the moment and you're disciplining and you had to do that, it's not the best time for you. Sometimes you got to walk away from that situation for a moment just to collect yourself so you can be reasonable. But when my daughter comes to me like later on and ask me why, and why is this, why is this important? Why is that important? Why did you discipline me here or whatever? And I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. And that's where I'm like, you love Jesus, right? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, well, and then I start that conversation, that foundation. And I think it's awesome what you're doing with your grandchildren because those concepts, like, even though they might not completely grasp them at their age, they'll begin to understand it as you're giving them more examples of that. Like, see how your behavior connects with this and positive, and like when sometimes they need discipline. But when you're looking at them, like when they do make those good choices, and I think cultivating virtue, when you start seeing that virtue starting to like bud inside them, and you're like, wow, they're trending in the right direction. Like you kind of come up behind that and you recognize that in them because that's going to help reinforce that good behavior. My wife is a teacher, and she does this all the time because a lot of times a lot of teachers around her will they're constantly nitpicking the bad behaviors and ignoring when the kids are actually trying.
Right. Yeah,
and
they
she's
don't encourage the good. Yeah.
And I think that's way, recognize that in your kids if they're trying, and going in the right direction to encourage that.
Well, I think this is so. I know you don't have as much experience with them as you do, but I took a stronger role in my grandchildren's lives last October.
Mm-hmm.
And as we had mentioned before, sometimes this virtue takes years, but can you, honestly, describe the difference you've seen since last October to now with those two children? Being honest, no names.
No, I know. I think this is it's important to this discussion of raising the kids because in the case of your grandkids, they've got you, they've got your wife, they've also got me because I have them for Sunday school and I've been able to take on this role.
Mm-hmm.
And like part of me is sometimes I get weary, but then I remember like you have them all day, like you have them all the time. So I don't. I have them on Sundays, and so there's an element of working through the difficulties.
Yep.
And I'm trying to teach them, and I'm trying to help them. And even just this last Sunday, we had some issues, and I let all the other kids go. I didn't even tell you this. And I kept your two grandkids behind, and I sat them down, and I said, "Listen, I love having y'all in here. I think y'all are great, but here's some basic things I'm going to need from you. Here's the way we're going to go forward." And I made them look at me, and they got really serious, and they were really listening.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to emphasize, a couple of months ago, that would never have happened.
Right.
That's
what I want to say is like
that would not have gone on. Like they're not there yet, but almost like they are not there yet, but they are so far from where they were.
Right. And that's the point is like, it's been almost a year. It's actually been a year now.
Mm-hmm.
So, wow, holy cow. So it's been a year since I started trying to instill these virtues into them. And in that year, yes, they are not there. We still have work to do, but they have come far.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And I think that's what I need parents to hear, because I think for so many parents, they get so discouraged and so like, this has gone on for a year, 2 years.
And I've gotten discouraged, I'll be honest. I'm just trying to be transparent so that people can understand that this is not always an easy task.
No, it's not.
It's wearisome. Again, my role is for an hour once a week, and I have to like prepare myself sometimes, like to go in. And to be clear, it's not just like I have a whole classroom, and so sometimes it can be a little overwhelming. Parents are going to feel the same way. It's like, but with a parent, it's like every day this is going on.
Yes.
And there's a wearisome that goes to it. So this is why with parents cultivating those virtues like fortitude.
Yeah.
We had an episode we talk about noble purpose. The raising of children is a noble task. It's a noble purpose, and it's massive.
Yeah.
And I think it's underrated. A lot of people think, oh, just make sure they stay alive, fed, and watered until they turn 18, and you're a success.
Or in some households, as long as they don't make a life or take a life.
Yeah. So we can set the bar really, really low. But I think the idea of raising, and that's what I always have my vision for those kids, is I see the adult I want them to become. I see the adult that they need to be in Christ. And part of my hope is I look at this and I realize we've got a decade or more that we can work on this.
And we've seen glimmers of that person.
We have.
Like that desire. So it's like you can see the glimmers in these children as you are working, as you're cultivating this virtue. Like you'll see those little glimmers. And then don't get me wrong, they'll stomp it. But like you'll see the glimmer for a second and you'll go, oh, no. Like they do want this. They will have this. Like this is a thing.
But it's not just forcing that behavior. It is, and that glimmer is when to see them want that.
Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah,
right. I think that's what I want parents, because this might be new for a lot of parents in thinking this way, and they might be super frustrated. They might be thinking, "Yeah, but you don't know my kids.
You don't know how bad my kids are," is what they're going to say.
Right. I will say,
I got you.
I will say they don't know your grandkids. I love your grandkids, but don't get me wrong. Like this is one of those things where even sometimes my kids, I'm like, what, where did you come from? What happened here? And like, what has gone on? Because you'll have these glimmers, but I want to also emphasize, like, we'll take my kids, okay? Because this happened just recently where one of my kids shot off his mouth to another, and the other put him down. And I'm like, oh, we're going to have to deal with, where did this come from? Part of that is going to be hormones. Part of that is going to be the natural, like if they're going through puberty and everything else. Part of it is just going to be frustration because this has gone on for a while and all of a sudden explodes.
I'm gonna keep my comments to myself over here, but I got lots of questions.
Okay. so we look at this, and what I try to encourage parents, like this happened and I didn't overreact. And we need to make punishment fit the crime, the virtue of correction. So in the case of the one who shot his mouth off, that was a lesser infraction than the physicality that was brought by the other. But also, when we chose our punishments, I actually did a delay for the purpose of I want him to understand the full consequences of what he's doing, of what he's done.
Wait, which one?
My oldest,
The one that put him down, or the one that shot his mouth off?
The one that put him down, the one that got physical. So my oldest got physical. So it gave me the opportunity to have this prolonged, like, there are results, there are consequences to your action. I'm doing this because I love you, because I'm training you, because I'm teaching you. What are we going to do to prevent this from happening? How do you view your brother as a hostile, or do you love your brother? Let's find out. Let's ask the question. And I'll ask my kids, do you love your brother? And they'll tell me, yes, they do. Is this how you treat someone that you love? No. Is this how you want to be treated? No. All right, so what are we going to do? What do you want? How do you want them to treat you? And now we're going to practice that.
Yep.
So that's, again, connecting the vision and the desire for what is true and good, and trying to align our actions and our passions. And with parents, I think it's so important to keep reiterating, we're not saying it's easy.
No.
We're not saying
it's easy.
Oh, now, just do this a couple times, and voila, they're squeaky clean. Oh no. This is a long game. This is why I think it was really good on your part, and you can find our episodes if you've missed and you're like, what did they talk about the first time? Go listen, because these virtues, we have to have them.
Yeah.
Yep.
If we don't have them, we cannot endure in the long game.
Good.
As a parent. We're going to take the short road. We're going to take the quick road.
The easy way.
We're going to take the easy way, or we're going to say things like, I need this for my sanity. It's like, but your kids need this for their soul.
Yeah, if you're doing it for your sanity, you will fail.
Yes.
If you are truly, because that's not, I mean, that goes back to, the noble task. That goes back to the reason behind what you're doing. If you're instilling virtue in your kids because you can't handle it, you will fail monumentally.
Yeah.
If you're not doing it for, the child themselves, for the family, for the good of that human being, it's like discipling anyone. I mean, and don't get me wrong, that's what this is. Like, one of the things we did talk about was, that we weren't discipled, or there was no discipleship. I mean, literally, this is discipleship.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we're on, if you're listening to us on the radio, it's a Christian radio station, so there's some element of a life that you're living. If you're just watching the podcast and you're a Christian already, I ask you this: if you're involved in ministry in any way, shape, or form, do you view your home as your first and primary ministry?
Mm-hmm.
And as pastors, that's a hard thing
It
to
is.
do.
You easily get busy.
And we
neglect.
sometimes forget that, but I think it's one of the most important things is to make sure that we realize, no matter our role in church, no matter our role overseas, no matter what we do for Christ, our first and primary ministry is our home.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's out of order, I mean, that's why being a pastor, you have to have, you have to have a godly home. You have to have a godly family, because if you can't do that, you've missed the point to even begin.
And I also, especially for those who are, have difficult children or are experiencing difficulty in a certain age of your child, especially as we talked about, as they're transitioning into adults, and there's pushback, and they want to separate a little bit from you, and there's, they get mouthy. I think, like, we recognize what Christ does for us, and what he has done and with our own, because I feel like sometimes we hold grudges with our kids, especially if they've been frustrating. And we carry over what was forgiven to the next day, or should have been forgiven.
We take what you're saying, we should take the grace shown to us through Christ, and we should show that same grace to them.
I've seen this with parents who just hold this grudges towards their child.
Sure.
And like, even when they're trying, they're not being noticed. I see teachers, and as I work in the education field, that hold grudges on kids the whole year. It's like they take the things that happens personally, and this kid can do he could do no good. Like, I'm like, I feel for those kids, because I'm like, he's trying, he's improved, and you don't even notice it.
I think that's a solid point for sure. And I know you wanted to say something, so I'll let you close out.
No, I was just on that to finish, especially for those that are in some sort of ministry. That was one of my larger stories about where I had always said that my family's my first ministry. And for the first 10 years of my marriage, I didn't do that. And it wasn't until about 10 years I was at a conference. And this is why I would say that indirect discipleship. I'd gone to a conference, gone to get some training. I was there. I was in a hotel room. And this whole notion, I looked back the last 10 years, I hadn't done that. I had not made my wife my first ministry. She had always been a back burner. And it broke me. And I remember hitting the hotel floor just weeping, because how could I have done this for so long? But again, I lacked someone to come alongside. But at that moment, and I was grateful because of this moment that the Holy Spirit used this particular conference I'd gone to bring this clarity, I said, now I'm not going to make that mistake anymore. And so that's my encouragement for those, not just in ministry, but even parents. Maybe parents, you're like, how could I not have seen this mistake for so long? Now you do. Now you understand it. That grace can train you in renouncing the ungodliness, walking with Christ. Don't let it hold you back anymore.
Exactly.
And I just want to finish out and just say, another good way to do it is to take a few steps in humility and invite someone alongside of you to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
But when they do hold you accountable, to know that they're doing it in love and take it the way you ought to take it. But until you invite someone to hold you accountable, you're going to just keep doing, you're going to keep reliving the cycle that you're in. Well, gentlemen, thanks for the conversation. I'm glad we could wrap that one up. You can find us at familiesofvirtue.com and our podcast, Virtuous Roots, on all streaming platforms. We appreciate you and stay blessed.